The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was filled with hundreds of species from across the stars. Some had scales, some had feathers, and some looked like nothing humans had ever imagined. Light from 3 distant suns came through the tall windows and made patterns on the marble floor. This was the most powerful place in the known universe, where the fate of trillions was decided. Ambassador stood at the human delegation's platform. She wore the formal black and silver uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. Her face showed nothing, but her hands were shaking slightly behind her back. She had worked for 15 years to build trust between humanity and the other species. Now she watched it all fall apart. High Arbiter Hal, a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms, read from a glowing tablet. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. The Council has voted. By a margin of 312 to 47, humanity's membership in the Galactic Union is hereby suspended. They will return to their home system until they learn proper behavior. A wave of approval moved through the hall. Many species nodded or made sounds of agreement. The clicked their mandibles in satisfaction. The hummed their approval. Only a few looked uncomfortable with the decision. Had expected this. The humans had known for months that the vote was coming. They had tried everything to stop it. They had shown data, made speeches, and called in every favor they had earned in 60 years. None of it mattered. The charges against humanity were many. They were too aggressive in trade negotiations. They expanded too fast. They asked too many questions. They changed things that had worked for thousands of years. Most of all, they made the older species nervous. Humans were unpredictable, and the galaxy did not like unpredictable things. Counselor, an elderly woman with gray hair and kind eyes, touched his arm. "We should say something. We should fight this." Shook her head slowly. "No, they made their choice. Now we make ours." She turned to the other human delegates. There were 20 of them, men and women who had dedicated their lives to building bridges between worlds. She saw anger in some faces, sadness in others, and resignation in most. She gave them a small nod. Without a single word, the human delegation stood up. They gathered their things quietly. They did not shout or protest or make threats. They simply walked toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the sudden silence. High Arbiter Hal seemed surprised. The human delegation may speak if they wish to respond to the verdict. Stopped at the door. She turned back and looked at the hundreds of faces watching her. For a moment, she thought about all the things she could say. She could remind them of the plagues humanity had cured, the wars they had stopped, the technologies they had shared freely. She could tell them about the human doctors working in hospitals, the human engineers keeping ancient ships running, the human teachers on 100 different worlds. Instead, she simply bowed her head slightly. "We understand. Goodbye." The doors closed behind them. Within hours, the message went out to every human in the galaxy. It was not an order because humans did not work that way. It was simply information. The galaxy had asked them to leave. The choice of what to do was up to each person. But humans, for all their differences, understood something that other species did not. When you are not wanted somewhere, staying only makes things worse. Pride is not worth more than dignity. Captain was loading cargo on Nexus Station when he got the message. He was a big man with rough hands and a gentle smile. He had been running supplies between stations for 20 years. He knew every shortcut, every danger zone, every safe harbor in this sector of space. His business partner, a creature that looked like a tall praying mantis, found him sealing the last containers. "What is happening? All the human ships are powering up. The station master says you are all leaving." Kept working. "That is right, we are going home." "But why? The suspension is just political nonsense. It will blow over in a few months. You do not have to actually leave." Stopped and looked at his old friend. They had worked together for 8 years. They had saved each other's lives twice. They had been at his wedding and had sent gifts when his daughter was born. "My friend," said softly, When someone tells you they do not want you in their house, you do not wait to see if they change their mind. You leave, and you do not come back until they truly want you there. But I want you here. Many of us want you here. I know, and I am grateful. Put his hand on this thin shoulder. But your council spoke for your people, and our answer is to respect that even if it hurts. All across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. Human doctors said goodbye to their patients. Human engineers handed over their tools. Human teachers hugged their students. Human soldiers shook hands with comrades they had fought beside for years. There was no anger in their leaving. That was what surprised everyone the most. The humans did not curse or threaten or promise revenge. They simply packed their things, said their farewells, and went home. In the council hall, High Arbiter Hal watched the reports coming in with growing confusion. He had expected protests, maybe even violence. Humans were supposed to be aggressive and emotional. This quiet acceptance did not fit his understanding of them. "They are really leaving," one of his aides said. "All of them. Every human in Union space is heading back to Earth." "Good," Hal said, but his voice was uncertain. "That is what we wanted." "Yes, High Arbiter, but what?" The aide hesitated. "Nothing. I am sure everything will be fine." The last human ship left Union space exactly 48 hours after the vote. It was a small medical transport carrying doctors who had been treating a rare disease on a remote colony. They had stayed long enough to train local staff and transfer all their patients. Then they too were gone. The galaxy was quiet. The humans were gone. Everyone agreed this was a good thing. That agreement lasted 6 days. Then the first system started failing, and the galaxy learned far too late what it had actually lost. On the 3rd day after the humans left, a hospital on the ran out of surgical. These were tiny machines, smaller than dust, that could repair damaged tissue and fight infections. Every advanced hospital in the galaxy used them. They had saved billions of lives. The head doctor, a senior named, sent an urgent message to their supplier. The response came back within minutes. The supplier was a human company based on Mars. The company had closed. All employees had gone home to Earth. There was no one left to make the. Thought this must be a mistake. Surely other companies made these. He spent hours searching the galactic trade networks. What he found made his blood run cold. There were other manufacturers, but human were better. They were cheaper. They worked on more species. Over the decades, other companies had simply stopped competing. Why bother making an inferior product that no one wanted to buy? Now there was nothing else available. The hospitals had a 2-week supply. After that, surgeries would become much more dangerous. People would die from injuries and diseases that should have been easy to treat. Sent his report to the government. He hoped someone would find a solution. He did not know that similar reports were coming in from everywhere. On day 5, the first hyperspace beacon failed. Hyperspace travel was the backbone of galactic civilization. Ships could cross vast distances in hours instead of centuries, but hyperspace was dangerous. Without the beacons to guide them, ships could get lost in dimensions that no living mind could understand. They would never be seen again. The beacons were old technology, built thousands of years ago by species long extinct. No one really understood how they worked anymore. But humans had a strange gift for understanding machines. They could feel when something was wrong, even if they could not explain it. For decades, human engineers had maintained the beacon network. It was boring work. The pay was low. The stations were lonely. Other species considered it beneath them, but humans did it anyway because it needed to be done. Now the humans were gone, and no one knew how to adjust the quantum anchors. The beacon drifted out of alignment by less than 1%. That was enough to make the hyperspace lane unstable. 3 cargo ships entered the lane that day. None of them came out. On day 6, the Dominion sent a desperate message to the Council. Their agricultural world, Harvest 7, was dying. Harvest 7 had been a wasteland 200 years ago. Centuries of war had poisoned the soil and killed the native plants. They had tried everything to restore it. Nothing worked. Then a human biologist named Doctor had visited the planet and spent 3 years developing special bacteria that could clean the soil. It had worked. Slowly, over decades, Harvest 7 had become green again. Now it fed 50 million and exported food to a dozen other worlds. Doctor had won many awards. They had built a statue of her in their capital. But no one had paid attention to one small detail. The bacteria needed regular adjustment. The soil conditions changed with the seasons, and the bacteria had to change too. Doctor had been doing this work for free, visiting the planet every few months. After she retired, she trained other human biologists to continue the work. Now those biologists were gone. The bacteria was starting to die. Without it, the soil would become poison again within months. The crops would fail. 50 million would starve. Counselor stood before the emergency session of the council. She was tired. She had not slept in 2 days, but her voice was strong and clear. "I warned you," she said. "I told you what would happen, but you did not listen." High Arbiter Hal shifted uncomfortably in his seat. No one could have predicted this. "I predicted it. 46 other council members predicted it. We showed you the data. We explained how much the galaxy depended on human work. You ignored us because you did not want to believe it." She activated a holographic display. Numbers and charts filled the air around her. Human companies manufactured 73% of all medical. Human engineers maintained 81% of the hyperspace beacon network. Human agricultural experts worked on 214 worlds with failing ecosystems. Human teachers staffed 63% of the schools in the outer colonies. Human security contractors protected 47% of the trade routes. The numbers kept coming. Each one was a shock to the council members who had voted for the suspension. They had not known. They had not bothered to find out. "You thought humans were just visitors," continued. "Newcomers who had not earned their place. But while you were busy looking down on them, they were holding your civilization together. They did the jobs no one else wanted. They fixed the problems no one else could solve. They worked for low pay in dangerous conditions, far from their home, because the work needed doing." She turned off the display and faced the council directly. "Now they are gone, and you have perhaps 3 months before systems start failing that cannot be fixed. The hyperspace network will collapse, trade will stop, worlds will be isolated, people will starve, and it will be your fault." The hall was silent. No one knew what to say. Finally, a delegate spoke up. "Then we must bring them back, send a message to Earth, tell them we made a mistake, offer them better terms." Laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think it is that easy? You publicly humiliated them. You called them dangerous and uncivilized. You threw them out of their homes and jobs with no warning. And now you want to just ask them to come back. What else can we do?" Gathered her things to leave. "I do not know, but I know this. You cannot treat people like garbage and then expect them to save you. That is not how trust works. That is not how anything works." She walked out of the hall, leaving the council to face the consequences of their choice. High Arbiter Hal refused to admit he was wrong. In his long life, he had never apologized for anything. He was not going to start now, especially not to humans. "We do not need them," he told the council 3 weeks after the departure. "Any species can be replaced. We simply need to reorganize and adapt." Some council members looked doubtful. The problems were getting worse every day. But Hal was powerful, and no one wanted to challenge him directly, so they agreed to try his plan. They took over medical production. They were clever people with advanced technology. Surely they could figure out how to make work. They studied the human designs and built new factories. They produced worked, but not well. Human had been designed to work on hundreds of different species. The new only worked properly on bodies. When used on other species, they caused problems. Sometimes they attacked healthy tissue by mistake. Sometimes they simply stopped working. Doctors across the galaxy had to choose between using dangerous or returning to older, slower methods of treatment. Death rates in hospitals increased by 30%, then 40%, then 50%. The collective, a group of hive-minded insects, volunteered to maintain the hyperspace beacons. They were known for their precision and their ability to work together perfectly. If anyone could do the job, it was them. But precision was not what the beacons needed. The quantum anchors did not follow logical patterns. They drifted in ways that could not be predicted by mathematics alone. Human engineers had learned to feel the drift, to sense when something was wrong before the instruments showed it. They had no such instinct. They followed their procedures exactly, and the beacons kept failing. Within a month, 17 major hyperspace lanes were classified as unstable. Ships that entered them had only a 70% chance of arriving at their destination. Trade slowed to a crawl. Goods that had taken days to ship now took weeks, if they arrived at all. Economies that had thrived for centuries began to collapse. Factories closed because they could not get raw materials. Stores ran out of products. People lost their jobs. On some worlds there were riots. Watched the news from her small apartment on Earth. She was a middle-aged woman with short black hair and clever hands. For 11 years, she had worked on Beacon Station Gamma 7, maintaining one of the most important hyperspace routes in the galaxy. She had loved that job. She had loved the quiet of space, the hum of the ancient machines, the satisfaction of keeping something important running. She had made friends with the and the who worked alongside her. They had celebrated holidays together, shared meals, told stories about their homes. Now she watched those same struggle, with problems she could have fixed in an hour. Her husband brought her tea and sat beside her. He had been a cargo ship pilot before the suspension. Now he worked at a fishing company on the Korean coast. It was honest work, but he missed the stars. They are trying to recalibrate the quantum anchors with standard tools, said, pointing at the news report. That will never work. The anchors do not respond to standard calibration. You have to feel the resonance and adjust by hand. Watch the screen. An engineer was explaining that they were following all proper procedures. In the background, warning lights flashed on the station's control panel. Could you tell them how to do it right? Asked. Was quiet for a long moment. She thought about her colleague, Elle, who had always brought her sweet fruits from his. She thought about the station manager who had cried when left, saying she was the best engineer they had ever had. They did not ask, she said finally. They told us to leave. If they want our help, they know where to find us. It was not cruelty that made her say this. It was something harder. It was the knowledge that helping people who did not respect you only taught them to keep disrespecting you. Sometimes, the kindest thing you could do was let people face the results of their choices. On the border worlds, things were even worse. For decades, human mercenary companies had kept the peace in areas where the official navies did not go. They protected trade routes from pirates, rescued ships in distress, and stopped small conflicts from becoming big wars. The humans had done this work because it needed doing, and because they were good at it. They never asked for power or territory. They just wanted to be paid fairly and treated with respect. Now they were gone, and the pirates grew bold. The Crimson Fleet, a group of raiders who had been nearly destroyed by human forces 10 years ago, emerged from hiding. They attacked 3 cargo convoys in the first week, then 5 more. Then they attacked a civilian passenger ship and took 200 hostages. The Dominion Navy sent ships to stop them. The Navy was large and well-equipped, but it had not fought a real battle in decades. The officers had earned their ranks through politics, not skill. The sailors had trained for parades, not combat. The first battle was a disaster. 3 Dominion cruisers faced a single pirate battleship. The cruisers had more guns and better armor. They should have won easily. Instead, they flew in confused formations, shot at each other by accident, and retreated when the pirate ship fired its first missiles. 2 cruisers were destroyed. The third limped home with half its crew dead. The pirates laughed and attacked another convoy. High Arbiter Hal called an emergency meeting. For the first time, there was real fear in his voice. "We need solutions," he demanded. "Real solutions, not excuses." But no one had any solutions. The medical crisis was getting worse. The hyperspace network was falling apart. The economy was collapsing. Pirates were running wild. And winter was coming to Harvest 7, where 50 million waited for crops that would never grow. One of Hal's aides, a young named, finally found the courage to speak. "High Arbiter," he said quietly, "perhaps we should contact the humans." Hal's 4 eyes narrowed with anger. "Never. I would rather watch the galaxy burn than beg those primitives for help." Bowed and said nothing more. But he thought to himself that burning was exactly what the galaxy was starting to do. 3 months after the human departure, High Arbiter Hal was forced to do something he hated. He asked for help. He could not go to Earth himself. His pride would not allow it, and besides, many humans would probably try to kill him if he showed his face. So he sent his daughter instead. X was young for her species, only 200 years old. She had her father's blue skin and 4 arms, but not his cruelty. She had actually liked humans. She had studied at a human university on Mars and had many human friends. When her father announced the suspension vote, she had argued against it for hours. Now she traveled to Earth on a small diplomatic ship, carrying a message she did not believe in. Her father wanted her to demand that the humans return to work. He wanted her to remind them of their duty to galactic civilization. He wanted her to threaten them with consequences if they refused. X knew this approach would fail, but she went anyway, hoping she could find another way. Earth was beautiful from space, a blue and green marble wrapped in white clouds, orbiting a yellow sun. It was a small world compared to the great planets of the galaxy, but it had produced a species that had changed everything. The humans did not make her wait. They sent a shuttle to bring her down within an hour of her arrival. This was unusual. When the humans had been part of the Union, they had followed all the complex diplomatic protocols. They had made important visitors wait for days to show respect for the process. Now they just said, "Come down, we will talk." The shuttle landed in a city called Seoul. X had never been to Earth before, and she was surprised by what she saw. She had expected anger and resentment. She had expected protests and signs calling for revenge. She had expected a species preparing for war. Instead, she found a city at peace. People walked through clean streets, talking and laughing. Children played in parks while their parents watched. Old people sat on benches and fed birds. Shops were open and busy. Music played from somewhere nearby. There was no sign of the crisis that was destroying the rest of the galaxy. The humans seemed completely unconcerned. Her guide was a young man named, a junior diplomat with a friendly smile. He drove her through the city in a small electric car, pointing out landmarks and explaining the history of different neighborhoods. "You seem very calm," X said finally. "Do your people not know what is happening in the galaxy?" Nodded. "We know, we watch the news, it is very sad." "Sad, is that all? People are dying, civilizations are collapsing. Does that not concern you?" Was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "It concerns us very much, but we did not cause these problems. We spent 60 years trying to help. We were told we were not welcome, so we came home. But you could help now. You could save millions of lives." "Yes, we could, turn down a quiet street lined with trees. But we were not asked to help. We were told to leave. There is a difference." X did not understand. In her culture, when someone needed help, you helped them. You did not wait to be asked politely. You just did what was necessary. But humans, she was learning, thought differently. They had been hurt. They had been rejected. And they would not come running back just because the people who rejected them were now in trouble. The car stopped in front of a simple building surrounded by gardens. This was the Office of Galactic Relations, though that name was now somewhat ironic. Doctor, the director, met X at the door. Was a small woman in her 60s with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore simple clothes and no jewelry. She looked like someone's grandmother, not the most important diplomat on Earth. She led X to a sitting room with large windows overlooking a garden. A pot of tea was already waiting. They sat across from each other on comfortable chairs. "Thank you for coming," said. "I know this must be difficult for you." "You know why I am here," X replied. "The galaxy needs human help. My father sent me to negotiate your return." "Your father sent you to threaten us." X winced. Was right, of course. Her father's instructions had been full of demands and warnings. If the humans did not return immediately, there would be consequences. The Union would blockade Earth. Human assets would be seized. Human citizens who remained in Union space would be arrested. All empty threats, and they both knew it. The Union could barely keep its own ships running. It had no power to threaten anyone. "I am sorry," X said. "I do not agree with my father's approach. I came hopping to find another way." Poured tea for both of them. Her movements were slow and graceful. She seemed completely at peace. "What would you like to say?" asked. Set aside her prepared speech and spoke from her heart. "People are dying. The medical systems are failing. The hyperspace network is collapsing. There will be famines and wars. Millions, maybe billions, will suffer. You have the power to stop this. Please, I am asking you, not as a diplomat but as a person who does not want to see so much pain. Please help us." Listened carefully. When X finished, she took a sip of her tea. "That was much better than your father's message would have been," she said. "I appreciate your honesty. Will you help?" Set down her cup and looked out at the garden. An old man was pulling weeds near a rose bush. A child ran past, chasing a butterfly. Life continued, simple and peaceful. "Let me tell you a story," said. "When I was young, I worked as a doctor on a colony world. There was a disease killing children and no one knew how to stop it. I spent 3 years there, working every day, sleeping only a few hours a night. I saved many lives. The government gave me a medal." She turned back to X. "Then the ambassador spoke at the medal ceremony. He thanked me for my service. And then he said that humans were useful, like good tools. Tools that should know their place and not ask for more than they deserved." X felt her face flush with shame. "I am sorry, that was wrong of him." Yes, it was, but he was not unusual. That is how most species saw us. Useful tools, clever animals, not equals, not partners, just servants who should be grateful for the chance to serve. His voice remained calm, but there was old pain beneath the words. "We gave everything we had for 60 years. Our knowledge, our labor, our lives. Thousands of humans died doing dangerous work that other species would not touch. And when things got difficult, when powerful people decided we were inconvenient, the galaxy threw us away like broken tools." "We made a terrible mistake," X said. "We know that now." "Do you? Or do you just want us to fix your problems so things can go back to the way they were?" Leaned forward. "Here is the truth. We do not need you. We never needed you. We joined the Union because we wanted to help, to learn, to grow together. But we can be happy here on Earth. We can build our own future. We do not need the galaxy to be complete." X felt despair settling into her chest. "Then there is no hope." "I did not say that," smiled gently. "I said we do not need you. That does not mean we will never help again, but things must change. We will not be tools anymore. If we come back, it will be as equals, as partners, as friends." "What would that require?" refilled their teacups. I do not know yet, but I know it will not happen quickly. Trust, once broken, takes a long time to rebuild. Your people will have to prove they have changed, not with words but with actions, and we will have to decide if we believe them. X left Earth the next day. She did not carry threats or demands back to her father. She carried only the truth. The humans would not be forced or fooled into returning. If the galaxy wanted their help, it would have to earn it. Her father did not like this answer, but by then he had bigger problems to worry about. 1 year after the humans left, the Galactic Council no longer existed. It did not end with a grand battle or a dramatic announcement. It simply fell apart, piece by piece, as the systems that held it together stopped working. The last official meeting had only 30 delegates, sitting in a half-empty hall with broken lights and malfunctioning translators. They voted to dissolve the Union and went home to whatever was left of their worlds. High Arbiter Hal did not live to see this final meeting. 6 months after the human departure, his own guards had killed him. The official story was that he had died peacefully in his sleep. Everyone knew the truth. His stubborn pride had cost too many lives, and eventually someone had decided he needed to stop. The galaxy that remained was a shadow of what it had been. The hyperspace network was mostly gone. Only 30% of the routes still worked, and even those were dangerous. Journeys that once took hours now took months. Some worlds had been completely cut off, isolated forever from the rest of civilization. The great trading empires had collapsed. Without reliable shipping, economies had failed. Factories closed. Cities emptied. On some worlds, people had gone back to farming with hand tools, trying to survive on whatever they could grow. The Dominion had torn itself apart in civil war. When the crops on Harvest 7 failed, 50 million people faced starvation. Different factions blamed each other. Fighting broke out. Within months, the 1,000-year-old Dominion was nothing but scattered territories fighting over scraps. The consortium had fractured into competing groups. Their famous unity was gone, replaced by bitter arguments over who was responsible for the disaster. Old friendships became new hatreds. Trading partners became enemies. Even the species that had survived relatively intact were changed. They had learned a hard lesson about depending on others and taking things for granted. They had learned that the galaxy was not as stable as they had believed. They had learned that small kindnesses, repeated over years, could hold everything together, and that losing those kindnesses could break everything apart. In the ruins of the old order, new powers were trying to rise, but they had no interest in rebuilding what was lost. They just wanted to grab what they could and protect themselves from the chaos. It was in this broken galaxy that a delegation came to Earth. This was not like X's visit a year before. This time, the visitors were the most powerful leaders left in known space. Presidents and generals, queens and high priests, 23 of them, representing species that had once looked down on humanity as barely civilized newcomers. They came in worn ships with patched hulls and failing engines. They came with empty treasuries and hungry populations. They came with nothing to offer except the admission that they had been wrong. President met them in a garden outside Seoul. He was an old man with white hair and a deeply lined face. He had been elected 6 months ago, chosen specifically because he had no interest in galactic politics. He had been a fisherman before the human space program began. He remembered a time when Earth was alone in the universe. His granddaughter played nearby, throwing a ball for a small brown dog. She was 8 years old and did not understand why all these strange aliens had come to visit. Her grandfather had told her it was important, but she did not see why she had to be there too. The lead delegate was a queen named. She was old for her kind, her shell from years of war and hardship. She had been one of the few council members who voted against the human suspension. Now she was all that remained of the government. She bowed low before, a gesture of deep respect in her culture. The other delegates did the same, each following the customs of their own species. Some knelt, some touched their foreheads to the ground, some simply stood in silence with their eyes lowered. Watched all this with a calm expression. He did not smile or frown. He simply waited until they were finished. "Please stand," he said. "You do not need to bow to me. I am just a man." The delegates rose uncertain. They had prepared speeches full of apologies and promises. They had brought offers of permanent council seats, veto power, trade agreements, territory. Anything the humans wanted, they were ready to give. Spoke for all of them. "President, on behalf of the remaining galactic powers, we come to make amends. We know we treated humanity poorly. We know we caused this disaster through our arrogance and fear. We are here to offer humanity full membership in a new galactic union, with whatever powers and privileges you require." Nodded slowly. "That is a generous offer." Hope flickered in the delegate's eyes. "But I must decline." The hope died, made a sound of distress. "Please, we will give you anything. Name your price." "You misunderstand," said gently. "We do not want power over you. We never did. Power was never the point." He turned and watched his granddaughter playing with the dog. She threw the ball badly and it rolled into a flower bed. The dog chased it eagerly, trampling several plants, laughed with pure joy. "When we joined your union 60 years ago, we were excited. We had so much to share and so much to learn. We wanted to be part of something bigger than ourselves. We wanted to help build a better future for everyone." His voice was calm, without anger or bitterness. He was simply stating facts. "We gave everything we had. Our best minds worked to solve your problems. Our young people traveled to distant worlds to teach and heal and build. Our soldiers died protecting strangers. And we did this not for reward or recognition, but because it was right, because that is who we are." He turned back to the delegates. "You taught us something important. You taught us that our worth does not depend on your approval. You taught us that we can be happy without you. You taught us that sometimes the people you help the most will hurt you the worst." Lowered her head. "We were fools." "Yes, you were. But so were we in a way. We kept helping even when it was clear we were not respected. We kept giving even when nothing was given in return. We thought that if we just worked hard enough, you would eventually see our value." Smiled, and it was a sad smile, full of hard-won wisdom. "We were wrong. Respect cannot be earned by service alone. It must be freely given, and you were not ready to give it." "We are ready now," another delegate said desperately. "We see your value. We know what we lost." "Do you, or do you just want us to fix your problems again?" Shook his head. "I do not say this to hurt you. I say it because it is true. You are here because you need something from us, not because you have truly changed." The delegates had no answer. He was right, and they knew it. Walked over to his granddaughter. The dog had returned with the ball, tail wagging. Threw it again, and the dog bounded away. "If you truly want our help," said without turning around, "then you must change. Not for us, but for yourselves. Learn to do the work you despised. Learn to value service without glory. Learn to see others as equals, not as tools." He picked up his granddaughter, who wrapped her arms around his neck. "When you have done this, when you have proven through years of action that you have truly changed, then come back. We will talk again. We are patient. We have time." He began to walk back toward the house, carrying in his arms. "Wait," called out. "How long, how many years must pass?" Paused at the door. He looked back at the 23 most powerful beings in the galaxy, standing helpless in his garden. "As long as it takes," he said. "As long as it takes for you to become the kind of civilization we would be proud to join. Not because you need us, but because you want us. Not as servants, but as family." He carried his granddaughter inside and closed the door. The delegates stood in silence for a long time. Then slowly they returned to their ships and flew home to their broken worlds. They had much work to do, years of work, maybe generations. But for the first time since the humans left, they had something they had lost along the way. They had hope. And somewhere on Earth, an old man sat with his granddaughter and watched the sunset, content in the knowledge that humanity had finally learned its own worth. They would help the galaxy again someday. But this time, it would be different. This time, they would be equals. This time, they would be respected. And this time, they would never forget what they were worth.